What's good? It's Woog. We might have a pretty interesting stylistic matchup that could lead to some unexpected results. We've got William Zepeda, 29 wins and 0 losses, taking on Maxi Hughes, 26 wins and 5 losses. This is a battle of two top 10 lightweight contenders. Like according to Ring Magazine, they have William Zepeda listed as the number 5 fighter in the division, and they have Maxi Hughes as the number 9 fighter in the division. And one thing that just jumped out at me about this fight is the lopsided odds. Like if you look at Odds Checker, they have William Zepeda, the A-side fighter, the one of Golden Boy's most promising prospect turned contenders. They've got Zepeda going off as a 6.5 to 1 favorite. So he's at a minus 650. And I just find this interesting, being that Maxi Hughes's latest fight was a fight that most viewers, including the broadcast, the unofficial scorecard of Mark Kriegel, Maxi Hughes, I thought, deserved the decision win over George Kambosos in his last fight. I mean, Mark Kriegel had the final unofficial scorecard 117 to 111. So we're talking 9 rounds to 3 on Kriegel's scorecard. And that fight was supposed to be a comeback fight for George Kambosos. So he was the one with the promotional push. And that's what you got from Mark Kriegel's scorecard. You had Timothy Bradley going into the 12th round saying that George Kambosos' corner should have been advising him to go for the knockout because he needs knockdowns or a knockout to have a chance at winning this fight. So the broadcast clearly thought that Maxi Hughes was doing enough to win the fight. I mean, he probably won those early rounds and then started to really take control in like the 5th, 6th, and maybe 7th round. And then it was competitive from that point on to where you did have a lot of swing rounds, but you had Maxi Hughes with a few rounds that you kind of had to give to Maxi Hughes. And one of the scorecards, the official scorecards in Kambosos versus Hughes, was Kambosos winning 117-111. So that judge gave Maxi Hughes a total of 3 rounds. And again, most viewers thought that Maxi Hughes won the fight. So coming off of that fight to be coming into this fight against William Zepeda as a plus 850, that's pretty alarming. But then you look at William Zepeda and you look at his last 2 or 3 fights, and you can see why he is a major favorite against Maxi Hughes. William Zepeda just has this punch output that sets records in certain fights. Like if you look at him in his latest fight against Mercito Hesta, look at how many punches he's throwing in like the first 3 to 4 rounds. I mean, he TKO'd him in the 6th round. And this was a Mercito Hesta that was coming off of a decision win over Jojo Diaz. William Zepeda basically gave him no room to breathe in that fight. It was just all punches all the time. And even when Hesta, who's a bit of a sweet scientist, he knows how to move laterally really well. He's very well reflexed where he throws good counter punches and so forth. Well, even when Hesta would then pivot, circle out, and then start moving, William Zepeda would take a step forward, cut the ring off well, and start with a jab, a long jab. So even when he's not throwing power punches, he's sticking that long jab out there just to make sure that you are constantly occupied with his activity. And before that, he knocked out Jaime Arboleda like in the 2nd round. Before that, he beat the brakes off of Joseph Jojo Diaz. Now, Jojo Diaz did have a couple of moments where he stuck William Zepeda. Didn't quite wobble him, but he buzzed him a couple of times. That's one thing about William Zepeda. He does get hit, and I've seen him kind of rocked a bit in a couple of fights. Now, he first made a splash in a fight against Hector Tanahara Jr., who was the A-side fighter of that fight. Tanahara was supposed to be one of the rising prospects, and Zepeda just overwhelmed Tanahara, stopped him in the 6th round, and then he beat Moralde and Vietas, stopping them in the 4th and the 3rd rounds. And then William Zepeda had a bit of trouble against Rene Alvarado, a crafty veteran who was in big stretches of the fight able to match Zepeda's output and effectiveness. So Zepeda had to really work to win that fight against Alvarado. I thought Zepeda finished the fight pretty well, but I thought that he fell behind a bit in the early to middle rounds. Nonetheless, he won by unanimous decision, and then he fought that fight against Jojo Diaz, where again, I can't think of the last guy who one-sidedly put a beating on Jojo Diaz in the way that William Zepeda did. Devin Haney didn't beat Jojo Diaz that badly, nor did Mercito Hesta or Jesus Perez. That was Jojo Diaz's last fight, in a fight that I thought Jojo Diaz probably should have earned the decision win. I mean, it depends on if you value Jesus Perez's volume over Jojo Diaz's effective kind of sharp shooting within the exchange type of punching. But all that to say, Jesus Perez nor Mercito Hesta beat up on Jojo Diaz in the way that William Zepeda did. So William Zepeda is an absolute force, and we're just kind of curious watching him fight over fight, seeing when somebody can get in there and kind of do something about it, right? Like, you might say, okay, well, William Zepeda isn't the hardest puncher, but he's got a ton of volume. He's a little bit Emmanuel Navarrete-like in that regard. Very different style, and I think that Navarrete is a lot more unorthodox, a lot more awkward. He's throwing punches from much different angles. William Zepeda is throwing, conventional style punches. He's just throwing a ton of them. So I would say he's a mix of maybe Navarrete and some Jaime Munguia. Again, he doesn't have great knockout power, but you do see him getting a lot of early stoppages because he does hit hard, and everything that he's throwing with wicked intentions. Like, he'll go, 5 shots up top and then break you off with like 2 to 3 mean punches to the body. So he mixes up the attack. He does have an assortment of different punches, but again, it's a lot more conventional than what you're going to get out of Navarrete. So when I size up William Zepeda versus Maxi Hughes, first of all, this is Southpaw versus Southpaw. William Zepeda, again, fought Mercito Hesta in his last fight, so that was Southpaw versus Southpaw, and then 2 fights before that fought Jojo Diaz, another Southpaw. So this will be 3 out of 4 of Zepeda's latest opponents, Southpaw, whereas Maxi Hughes fought George Kambosos in his last fight, fought Kid Galahad just before that. Now, Kid Galahad was moving up in weight. Kid Galahad, also an orthodox fighter, kind of a sweet scientist himself. Now, Maxi Hughes does have a few losses earlier in his career. He's lost to Liam Walsh. He lost to him in 2019. He beat Ryan Walsh in the fight right before the Kid Galahad fight. Hughes got stopped by Sam Bowen in 2018. He got stopped in the 8th round. Before that, he had 3 fights with Martin Joseph Ward. The first one was a draw. The second 2 were losses to Martin Joseph Ward. So Maxi Hughes does have a few losses, but his latest loss before that controversial loss against George Kambosos was back in 2019. So he had like a 7-fight winning streak going into that fight against Kambosos. But Zepeda versus Maxi Hughes, Southpaw versus Southpaw. The question is, Maxi Hughes, for as good as a craftsman as he is, and he is a pretty slick fighter, very sneaky, well-timed, left hands to the body as well. I just wonder whether William Zepeda is going to respect Maxi Hughes' punching power and his output. Like, if he gets caught by a couple like clean counters, will Zepeda be a little bit more reluctant and cautious in closing the distance? I tend to believe no. Now, I do think that Zepeda is going to run into some trouble, especially in the early rounds. I think he's going to have to kind of figure out Maxi Hughes, because Maxi Hughes, again, moves pretty well, and he's a good counterpuncher, pretty good defensively. He's going to pose some problems stylistically for Zepeda. Now, Maxi Hughes is also entering his mid-30s, so he's 34 years old right now. I just wonder, even if he has success in the early rounds, if Zepeda is determined to keep on coming forward and throwing like 100 punches around, which again is not uncommon for William Zepeda, will Maxi Hughes have the durability and the legs and the reflexes and just the cardio to keep up with that pace? That has been the advantage that Zepeda has been carrying into these different fights. Like, they just cannot keep up on the, I use this phrase often, treadmill from hell. They're just on a pace, and it's like, can I turn this thing off? When does this thing end? And it's just nonstop onslaught coming from William Zepeda. Even if Maxi Hughes, again, has success in the early rounds, I just don't see William Zepeda letting up. And Maxi Hughes' latest couple of opponents are a lot more, cautious, and they're thinkers before they're coming in. George Kambosos, he's not going to just keep on jumping in and exchanging. Same thing with Kid Galahad. William Zepeda is unlike those guys. And even if you think that like a Ryan Walsh or John O'Carroll or anybody else is more aggressive, there are levels to aggression. Again, William Zepeda it's a short list of guys who throw that many punches with that much ferocity over the course of that many rounds. It just doesn't stop with William Zepeda. So Maxi Hughes is going to have to get William Zepeda's respect. He's going to pretty much have to hurt Zepeda to have a chance in this fight. I just don't see him fighting in the style of fight that he fought George Kambosos and winning enough rounds against Zepeda. The volume just isn't there. Even if you are landing some effective counters here and there, even if you are making him miss and then popping him with something clean, I just think that there's going to be much more of that round that is occupied with William Zepeda letting punches go, again, up top and down low. So, look, I'm going to go William Zepeda here. Not that I think that those odds are justified. Like, if you want to take a flyer on Maxi Hughes at plus 850, you could get a hell of a return if he is able to pull this off. I'm just looking at his age right now. I'm just looking at how William Zepeda doesn't really care what you're throwing unless you hit him with something really hard, like, and stop him in his tracks. But even after that, he seems to more or less shake it off and then come forward once again. I don't see Maxi Hughes keeping William Zepeda off of him. Mercito Hesta tried. Like, he showed a lot of heart, moved when he could. I look at Mercito Hesta and Maxi Hughes as being about the same caliber. You could argue that Maxi Hughes might be a little bit slicker than Mercito Hesta, but just quality-wise, I look at them as being at about the same level. Joseph Diaz are about the same level, at least at 135. I've never liked Jojo Diaz at lightweight, never did. But I don't know whether this Maxi Hughes fight is a step up. I think that this is kind of on par with Hesta and Jojo Diaz. But I'm going to go with William Zepeda here. Does he stop Maxi Hughes? I think he eventually breaks Maxi Hughes down, and I think he's going to stop him late. Once it's abundantly clear that Maxi Hughes isn't hurting William Zepeda, and he just starts getting belted throughout the rounds, especially as he starts to slow down in the middle rounds. If he starts to slow down, becomes easier to find, less crafty, less elusive, I see William Zepeda causing all kinds of problems for him. I see Maxi Hughes having to tie up, move again. But again, William Zepeda is able to cut the ring off and is able to close the distance. There is a chance that Maxi Hughes catches Zepeda so cleanly earlier in the fight that he drops Zepeda. There is a chance of that. I wouldn't be totally surprised if we get a kind of a flash knockdown with Zepeda hitting the canvas. I just think that even if we reach that point, it's going to be Zepeda with his foot on the gas in the middle and late rounds. And I'm going to go with Zepeda being the first to stop Maxi Hughes since Sam Bowen did in 2018. So yeah, I'm going to go with William Zepeda. This is a 12-rounder. I think Zepeda is going to stop him late. Like, it's just going to take a lot from Maxi Hughes. And again, he is a good fighter. Look, if he ends up kind of neutralizing Zepeda and kind of giving as good as he's getting throughout the course of much of this fight and is able to fight a competitive 12 rounds to where maybe Maxi Hughes loses, 8 rounds to 4, hats off to Maxi Hughes. It is very possible. I think he's capable of doing that. I just think that William Zepeda is going to be demonstrating so much firepower, and it's going to hit a point where Maxi Hughes doesn't have the durability to keep Zepeda from doing what he wants to do. And once Zepeda starts really doing what he wants to do and you're having trouble taking his heat, it just goes really, really bad for the opponents. Like, again, I have a lot of respect for Zepeda stopping Mercito Hesta in 6 rounds. Again, Jojo Diaz was able to stand up to it. It was in a 10-rounder. Jojo Diaz, though, he's never been stopped. Rene Alvarado was able to fight Zepeda competitively across 10 rounds. So going the distance can be done, but I do think that Zepeda is going to find a way to stop Maxi Hughes in the 9th through 11th rounds, somewhere in there. So I'm taking Zepeda to win via late stoppage. Let me know how you see this one. Do you agree with these lopsided betting odds? Do you think that the underdog, Maxi Hughes, in this case, has a legitimate shot at upsetting William Zepeda? Let me know your thoughts on this one in the comments. And also, given the landscape at lightweight, where you've got Lomachenko, who's about to fight Kambosos for a vacant, the WBO or IBF maybe belt. One of those 2 belts is going to be up for grabs between Lomachenko and George Kambosos. Esau Cruz is about to go up to fight Rolly Romero for the WBA belt up there. Gervonta Davis, it looks like I don't think they've set an official date, but he's about to fight the, at least according to Ring Magazine, number 6 fighter in the division, Frank Martin, who again is just behind William Zepeda at number 5. You've got Shakur Stevenson, who doesn't have a fight right now locked up. He's number 4 in the division. So this is a very competitive and fun division. You also have Raymond Murataya, who's got a fight coming up against a lesser name, but Raymond Murataya is going to be returning to the ring as well. Yeah, this is a very fun division. You got other prospects, Keyshawn Davis, prospects / contenders. Keyshawn Davis is in the division, as well as other up-and-comers. But yeah, let me know how you see William Zepeda versus Maxi Hughes. Who do you have winning the fight and how? And what do you think will result of, let's say, William Zepeda wins the fight? Do you think that he's going to be fighting another, Maxi Hughes is a top 10 guy. Is he going to fight another top 10 guy after that? Especially given the promotional landscape with William Zepeda on Golden Boy, who don't have any of these names that I just mentioned at 135. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.